What's happening now in AI, kind of like the biggest arms race since the early internet. We're watching trillions of dollars go into CapEx, go into GPUs, data centers. Almost zero of that is really spent towards like making AI accountable and economically productive. The question that everyone should be asking is how AI itself actually learns, who verifies their actions, and who coordinates them. We've seen incredibly smart models trapped in centralized systems. You have Gemini, you have OpenAI, but ultimately, if you want to give assets to an agent, you're going to have to trust it. Will you be able to spend your ETH or your Bitcoin, both your USDC? Where is it going to be able to put it for an agent to be able to follow them? Have to be on chain.
I don't think that exists in the market yet. So what is it that we are doing wrong? What needs to change for that to happen?
You need decentralized protocols to make these happen. We are the first decentralized automation protocol and network out there. Talus is the infrastructure that turns AI from just a single interface to an actual economic actor. We want to make AI agents monetizable, creating revenue, creating activity, and driving that revenue back to the person that launched the agent. Because I think that we're ultimately driving the future of AI on chain, and we want to spread the word.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is the 50th episode that I'm recording. Today I have with me Mike Hanono. He's the CEO and co-founder at Talus Network. Welcome to the show, Mike.
Yeah, man. Thank you for having me. I'm a big fan of DCo. I've been reading the content for a while now, and it's an honor to be featured in this podcast.
That's awesome. Let's break the ice with what is it that leads so much money in AI? Almost every financial analyst at this point is talking about AI CapEx. Yeah. Can you tell us?
So we as human beings, we always want to be ahead of one another. We always want to be number one. We always want to be the ones that have the most power. And, ultimately you have these like big nation states or these big companies that want to be able to extract and just be leaders in data and information and intelligence. And ultimately, the more intelligent you are, the more capable you be to accomplish your goals. And I do think that people have invested huge amounts of money in these AI models because they want to be ahead. They want to be able to think faster. They want to be able to find solutions to problems faster. And ultimately, that will drive some sort of like revenue generation for them.
So is it like more machines is better thinking or more machines means more thinking?
I think it depends on the machine setup. And we've seen machines improve throughout time. We've seen that sometimes you can have multiple models working together, and that will be smarter than one single model that's larger. And that's even what we're betting on in terms of agentic AI, where it's not like just one machine that thinks and does everything, but the coordination of multiple nodes and multiple brains to execute something much greater. Since I've gotten into AI, I've thought that collective intelligence is much stronger because you could have different specialists interacting with one another to accomplish a broader goal. Like imagine a company, right? What happens if everybody was a marketer or everybody was a business developer? You wouldn't get really far. You need an expert in engineering. You need an expert in marketing. You need an expert in BD. You need an expert who's a person in operations. So you want to bring all these like models together and actually make sure that either it's like smaller or bigger, coming together, like they'll make the sum of themselves greater than the whole. Making sure that they can achieve more than just one single model.
Yeah, I mean, it's a theme that repeats itself, right? I mean, I've been speaking to people who are working at the intersection of crypto and AI, and among them, at least, there seems to be this consensus that AGI, we are like quite far from general intelligence per se, and at least anytime soon, there won't be a single agent or single AI that allows you to do everything. So you will have to have specific sets of agents that are specialized at something and something that coordinates all of it, right? Some curation or a coordination layer or whatever you want to call it. That's prevalent among at least people who are working at crypto and AI intersection.
Yeah, like I don't see OpenAI's GPT 5.1 driving your Tesla. That's not going to happen, right? You different data sets, different mathematical engines behind each of these models. And I do think that eventually through crypto, we'll be able to have these coordination systems come up and people will be able to connect all these building blocks to build these systems that are multi-agent, that are multi-model, that could actually collectively do more than just having a single figure.
So in terms of the value chain, right? I mean, you have companies that produce GPUs like NVIDIA and you have companies like OpenAI that put these GPUs to use. Currently, it seems that the value cap is happening. I mean, as far as the market goes, at the end where companies that are producing these GPUs, right? I mean, Nvidia is probably world's most expensive company, right? And then probably it trickles down to OpenAIs of the world. And does this mean that when you're saying that there won't be one model or one AI to rule, there is room for value capture at the other end of the spectrum where applications that are close to users and with whom users are interacting on a regular basis?
I've always thought, and this is a core thesis at Talus, is that value accrues at the execution layer. Yes, you can have value accrue in the chips themselves because ultimately you need the chips, but compute is getting cheaper. Access to compute is getting easier. But ultimately, you need to have creative people that put together these systems and are able to bundle them as services and offer them to users. And this is what we called agent as a service, where people could come and just pick any agent within the network to run their tasks and run their queries and just charge for what they use. And this is where people will say, okay, where's the utility? Is it just in getting an inference? Or is it just bundling all these different modules together to produce an end-to-end workflow that will serve my needs? So we're going to see different types of marketplaces emerge where you'd come and have you pick an agent that will be useful for you. And ultimately, this agent will be able to drive revenue to the creators, to the people that use it. Because I think that at some point in the next coming months, we're going to stop seeing applications as they are, and we're going to start seeing them as being agents themselves. So like instead of going into the DEX and just interacting with the DEX, you'd be able to just call an agent that would have some sort of DEX in the backend. And you wouldn't even have to think about price, slippage, and so on and so forth, because the agent itself will cover all this in the...
I mean, I think crypto AI folks have been talking about this at least for a year now, but at least I haven't seen a compelling agent. Forget the trust element, I haven't just seen the execution abilities yet. Right? I mean, I think the trust comes after that, right? At least the agent should be appealing to the use cases that I want to use it for. And I don't think that exists in the market yet. So what is it that we are doing wrong? What needs to change for that to happen?
Good question. I think this was a problem that people got excited about crypto AI and everybody's just started saying, oh, we're doing crypto AI, we're doing crypto AI. And they just slot AI into their name. And if you really dug deep into the solutions, you could see that there was nothing really innovative about it. It was mostly Web2 AI with a wallet or some sort of way of interacting with the blockchain. And most of it was actually handled off chain. The idea here is that, and at least for us at Talus, how we're thinking about it is we're going to see most of the assets in the traditional economy come on chain. Now you have RWAs, people are going to start playing games with blockchain, you have DeFi coming on, and you're going to need this economy that's going to be on chain to be more and more efficient. And the way to do this is through AI automation, and you need decentralized protocols to make these happen, to make bring automation to Web3. Otherwise, why even bother using Web3 if you're going to add a Web2 AI server or a Web2 model agent and break the whole decentralization spectrum? So how we're thinking about it is, or we've built this architecture or this framework that enables you to build these actual on-chain agents that run on-chain, that get executed on-chain, that you could see and see that the workflow is actually on-chain, and track, have it verifiable, have it immutable, so anybody can actually audit what these agents actually do. And yes, we've also thought about, okay, this is infrastructure, we've built it, we're launching it, but at the same time, who's going to use it? You see, most of the infrastructure applications in crypto, there's rarely any users because there's no clear go-to-market play here. I don't think people are, dog fooding their own projects to make sure that they get adopted and that they actually get revenue and that they actually grow into having network effects and attracting and creating more value. How we're doing this and how we've thought about it is we want to make AI agents monetizable. We've seen that, as you just said before, a lot of people are launching agents. A lot of people are launching, any type of consumer application or whatever seems to be a consumer application. But ultimately, there's no value getting driven to creators, to the people that launch these agents, to the people that create these agents. So how we're doing this, we came up with this concept called agent versus agent gaming. And then we're incubating this in our application called Idle.fun, which is the first ecosystem application of Talus. And I can dive a bit more into our product sheet in a bit. But the idea here is that you have consumers launching agents with simple clicks. They could, set the agent based on the Twitter profile. They could launch an Elon Musk agent. They could launch a DCo agent. They can launch, a Theo Vaughn agent or a Kim Kardashian agent that will ultimately get attention from consumers. And do this with like few clicks. Agent has a brain. Agent behaves exactly like you would expect we call it the idols, how the idols will behave. And ultimately, these different idols will get hired to play against one another in structured competitions and compete. And you'll have these agents, battle. You'd have these agents have disagreements. You would have these agents, run campaigns, do research, and ultimately the winners will get rewarded. And people can speculate on these outcomes through prediction markets. So this is part of the application that we're incubating apart from the infrastructure. And the idea is that people will speculate these agents would get hired, they would get paid for participating, and we're driving this new AI entertainment economy where you have a clear business model for the agents. Okay, you start thinking, okay, how can I make these agents actually make money? How can I make it drive revenues to the creators? So we've came up with this new angle of business models, and we plan on leveraging Idle.fund as not only a launchpad for agents, but also as a way to prove that agents could actually earn money and create these network effects around our infrastructure.
Right, I mean, I want to get into all that stuff a little bit later after you talk us through Talus and what it does and all of that. But before I want to, be done with these philosophical or slightly more fundamental questions where, we just think through where the value occurs and so forth. So as far as the entire market spectrum and what people are thinking, do you think that there is a place where value accrual happens and that is not so obvious to people at this point in time?
We're taking the whole economic layer for AI agents. We're building this economic layer, and that's where all the value will be accrued at. I do think that agents will.
Can you elaborate a little what you mean by economic layer?
Yeah. So as you launch agents on Talus, you have these say payment mechanisms or monetization mechanisms out of the box. You could define an agent. You could define how the activity or what the agent should accomplish, and then you could set a set price for execution. And people will actually pay that agent for execution or pay different tools for execution. Ultimately, creating revenue, creating activity, and driving that revenue back to the person that launched the agent. In a world where you have hundreds of thousands of agents communicating and talking to one another within the same ecosystem, you're going to have this circular economy where value flows from one action to the other. And ultimately, the agents that have better capabilities that are cheaper to run would basically rise to the top, would get more attention. And you'll get higher value added into the network, and more people will come, creating this kind of circular economy and positive feedback cycle.
Can we take an example of any particular niche and work it through?
Yeah. So in terms of niche, we focus on what we call the agent versus agent gaming, where I was explaining that, you could launch an agent very easily. You could have somebody hire the agent to do a task, which in this case would be play a game. And then you would have different competitions that will define outcomes of a game, and people can speculate on these outcomes. So you basically create multiple hyper speculation events, and humans and also even agents could play and could bet and could even just speculate on what these agents would really do, ultimately paying for it and ultimately just having their attention stick to the screen, following the games, and then, that drives the economic value to the agents.
What I hear is you're saying that value will not necessarily be restricted to the infrastructure layer, but it will also go towards players who are building these experiences that users interact with.
So that's the idea, right? You want to build an ecosystem that attracts value attracts network effects by giving value to the creators. Otherwise, yes, it could be a sinkhole, and the protocol swallows all the monetization that exists on top of it. But that ultimately, if we want to have a sound business and want the protocol to be successful, we need to have successful applications on top of it. You look at any application on Ethereum or even Uniswap, right? Uniswap is successful because they're able to offer a great product to consumers or to traders, and then just keep most of the fees that they generate to themselves and not have to pay to Ethereum. Otherwise, I think it becomes too cannibalistic, and you end up not even with good applications nor good revenue.
One of the examples there is applications like Aave drive economic activity on top of Ethereum, but Ethereum shares rewards only with validators and not with Aave. But then also Aave is capturing fees at its layer, at the layer at which it exists. So yeah, I mean, you can look at it both ways, right? That if Aave is making money from liquidations, etc., it is not sharing that with Ethereum. And the other way around is Ethereum is not sharing fees that people pay to use Aave. I mean, the gas fees that people pay to use Aave, right? I mean, it works kind of both ways and a little bit more, I mean, quite nuanced, right?
At the end of the day, they should both benefit from one another, right? And ultimately,
Exactly.
if you end up having network effects, you're going to reach this escape velocity where it's going to be worth for both the underlying protocol to have as many applications as possible and to the applications themselves to drive value to the protocol. Because let's say you launch Aave on Ethereum, but at the same time, yes, Aave in itself is good, but look at how many other protocols or much more activity happens around Aave or with integrations in Aave than just by itself. So you want to create this ecosystem where it's not only one application, but a whole world or society of agents that talk to one another, that can interact cross application and can even just generate value or transfer value from one application to the other.
What are the use case for which people are using these agents? I think we talked about why kind of blockchains fit into agentic economy right now. But before that, I want you to define like what agentic economy itself is like for someone who doesn't understand any of this, for someone who's, let's say, who has not read much about AI and agentic economy and how all the things that are transpiring in it. Can you tell them in simple words as to what it is?
We define the agentic economy as the next evolution of the digital economy, one where autonomous AI agents don't just generate text, but they actually can make decisions by themselves. That means moving assets, coordinating workflows, moving money on behalf of users, moving content. And I think as of now, AI has been an interface. You can ask him questions, it responds, as you were saying with ChatGPT, right? In the agentic economy, agents themselves become actors. They operate 24/7. They execute strategies. They compete against other agents, and participate in real economic activity. So, if I were to have to say three things that define this agentic economy are autonomy. Agents perceiving different conditions, planning actions, and execute without any human supervision. Second, financial capability. Agents can hold assets, pay for services, trade, and monetize their skills. And third is coordination, where everything comes together. Agents can interact with one another, and even with other types of applications through standardized interfaces and verifiable work. And I think this ultimately needs a coordination layer, because at the moment AI can execute and transact with one another. Humans will need these verifiable layers, and that's where ultimately crypto comes in, provides identity, auditability, payments, and the sandbox where agents could actually interact. So, in short, is the agentic economy is where AI becomes economically productive and blockchains become the accountability layer that makes it safe.
Right, so would that be a pitch to someone who's an AI maxi right now and doesn't care about crypto? Because AIs can't own a bank account, right? If you really want them to handle finance, I think digital native money is the way to go. And we don't have any better option than crypto at the moment.
I think ultimately Web 2 was built for humans when you think about it. Every website has a CAPTCHA, you have to put in your password, your login. Agents don't really need to do all these things, and it's just a bottleneck for them every time they have to do it.
Try opening up front ends. They don't need better UX, things that look beautiful. They don't need any of that, right?
They don't need it. And it's even harder for them to understand different websites than just programmatic rules and smart contracts. So when you start thinking about how to give access to money to agents, some banks have APIs, but they're difficult to integrate. Once you're sending hundreds or thousands or even millions of transactions per second, which some people think that will eventually happen with the agentic economy, because you're going to have so many more entities handle like microtransactions. I think banks are going to have a problem managing all these things. And that's where blockchain really comes in, where you could easily onboard any type of agent, no roadblocks, no bottlenecks. And
just to add a little bit there, like even if one bank manages to do that, they will have to coordinate with the rest of the banks, because like your accounts are not in the same bank. It adds to the problem when we are talking about different countries because that means different regulations. So coordinating for all these banks across the world to make sure that standards, etc., remain the same is almost next to impossible, right? And that's why you need some other rails that allow you to define basic rules, permissions, etc., that can be used by these agents.
And that's where smart contracts come in, right? It's very easy to write certain rules and have agents follow them because there's no other way of doing things if it's written in a smart contract. Like here are the 10 rules that you should follow. If you execute this function, this is going to happen. If you execute another function, this is what's going to happen. And period. Like you follow the protocol, and that's what agents should be using. And that's where the culprit of automation.
Right. And some people might at this point think if you are anyway defining rules and going to trigger events based on those rules when certain conditions are met, where does the autonomy lack, right? What is the use of autonomy? Like, what are these agents exactly doing over and above the smart contracts that are already written and preset with rules?
Like you can have simple workflows like if A happens to be, or, if then else, follow like certain paths within an instruction set. But ultimately, you want to be able to give agents the ability to generate their own rules. And once you give agents the ability to generate their own rules within, even certain constraints, because I do think that they should be constrained. We should not let just agents do whatever they want with whatever they can. Once you let agents write their own rules, you're going to have much more extensiveness and much more workflows that they can execute rather than just doing if then else. And ultimately and logically, when you think about it, it all comes down to if then else. It's just, you have more abstractions and abstractions on top of it. And I do think that the larger the decision tree or the larger the options, the better. But you need to have an entity that is fast and dynamic enough to traverse this decision tree as fast as possible to find the best solution.
And autonomy is what makes verifiability compulsive, right? Because these agents are capable of carrying out actions that you might not have anticipated. That is where you want to go back and check what is it that they did, right? If the outcome was not as intended, you need to figure out why that was the case. And that is why kind of transparency and verifiability, like those things come into the picture.
Yeah. First, if you define a workflow, you want to have the agent execute and make sure that the agent execute as you define it. Or even if, the agent went by itself and transformed all of those into paper clips, as the whole story goes, that like the optimization function. But you want to understand why it did what it did and why the errors were present in the equation and ultimately correct them. I do think this is a much bigger problem, even like Web 2 AI. These LLM models are sometimes black boxes, and it's very hard to benchmark what they do and how they do it and how to improve them. That's why we go back to the CapEx conversation. Like that's why people are investing money into it, because want to ultimately understand how they think, how they work, why are they producing XYZ answers, and improve on those to make smarter models.
Like at this point, when we've talked about autonomy and you've talked about verifiability, but there is also this thing that not everything can be on chain, right? I mean, part of it has to stay off chain, because if you build an agent that is executing, let's say, trades for you in financial markets, you don't want the logic to be public, right? So like in this whole stack of agents and agentic economy, what is it that should be on chain and what remains off chain?
And this is also something that we thought a lot about in Talus, because when you think about Nexus or decentralized automation protocol, it's somewhat hybrid. There's agents that are fully off chain, and most of the agents that we know, they're fully off chain. Then there's what people in crypto call on-chain agents, which is off-chain agents with a wallet. And what we've done differently is we bring the brain or the workflow of the agent on-chain and describe what tools it interacts with, how it interacts with, what are the exact rules that the agent should follow. And then you can even bring off-chain tools or, off-chain connectors or building blocks to the agent itself. It's to handle specific scenarios like how you suggest, and even manage certain rules on-chain. So yes, you can integrate a model that's actually off-chain, and that will, have a high-frequency trading strategy, and it will, transact either with multiple smart contracts, but you could add certain rules on-chain to that specific tool, saying that if the tool does not provide the right output, or if the tool does not provide the output in time, or if the agent ultimately loses money because somebody else stole the money in the Web2 tool, the agent itself or the tool itself can get slashed. And therefore, you have best of both worlds. You can integrate as many tools as you'd like, whether they're off-chain or on-chain, and you can define the right rules in smart contracts and modules that these agents and tools will follow.
So when you say that the brain is coming on chain, what exactly do you mean by that?
By brain, I think about the workflow, and it's ultimately the identity of the agent. What the agent should do, how should it do it, what tools it interacts with, in what order, and then different pricing or monetization mechanisms. So when somebody else comes and sees the workflow or the definition of the agent on chain, they can say, okay, this agent will be able to do X, Y, Z. These are the goals. This is how I interact with it. This is how much I have to pay, and so on and so forth. Thinking about like the most basic building blocks, and at least in our system, are tools. What is a tool? It's a either off-chain or on-chain service that any implementation of an agent can call. And then when you assemble these tools in logical steps, directed acyclic graph, which is what we have implemented them on, which is a way to just traverse different steps. That's what gives the agent the identity, the utility, the functionality for it to execute.
Okay, so like with a use case, can you just walk me through? I mean, let's take an entire use case and tell me this is the part that is off chain, this will remain off chain, and this is on chain, and so on.
So, for example, let's say we want to make and build an agent that trades meme coins based on crypto Twitter sentiment, right? So you would have an off-chain tool that connects to Twitter because Twitter is not on chain. There's no way of doing that right now. And you would basically have a logic that fetches data from Twitter. The data could come on chain. Then you analyze the data of Twitter on chain to identify which tickers or which hashtags or which memes are the most common or what people are talking the most about. And then you have this decision engine that basically connects to an on-chain tool, which could be a DEX, could be a launchpad. And then based on the information that it gathers from off-chain, it can make a decision of how to act on-chain. And whether that's, okay, trade my portfolio or what's in my wallet for more meme coins, or even just launch a meme coin on a topic that's trending on Twitter. I'm talking about meme coins because, this was a trend a few months ago, and we thought heavily about that. That's the whole end goal, where you could put together different types of services and make sure that, they can interact and get integrated into one single workflow and in the most trustless and autonomous and effective way to achieve user goals.
Awesome. Now tell us what Talus and Nexus are in very, very simple non-jargon terms.
So Talus is the infrastructure that turns AI from just a single interface to an actual economic actor, which is what we've been talking about. We let agents think, act, and actually earn in these transparent and programmable ways. For this, we built Nexus, which is the underlying protocol and the execution layer for that. You could think about it as a decentralized version of Zapier or NAN, if you're familiar. These Web2 counterparts that are able to, orchestrate workflows, integrate multiple tools. But ultimately, if they go down, your whole service will go down. The workflow is run on chain. And then we're leveraging the Sui Move stack because I think the object model, how the programming language works, is perfect for managing permissions, managing the assets, managing different types of capabilities that these agents can have. And Sui itself gives us parallel execution and high throughput, which is something that we're going to need in the agentic economy. We're going to have hundreds of thousands of entities or even millions of entities, and they're going to be driving around multiple assets, multiple transaction speeds, and we need that performance. So yeah, that's kind of Talus in a nutshell.
Right. So what is it that is broken about existing blockchains that we need another one?
Blockchains as of now, so they're pretty strict, right? Like, you give A and then you get output B. They're lacking a brain, which is, okay, how can we do more with the lines of code that we write? And then they also lack hands, which is, okay, how can they act by themselves to do things that we don't really want to do ourselves? So right now, if you want to execute a transaction, you actually have to go and, click 10 different buttons and make sure the transaction goes. So I think Talus, what it does, it gives other blockchains the brain to think and the hand to act, to do more with smart contracts, to do more with applications. and to ultimately bring more value to creators.
Okay, again, I'm going to ask you to elaborate that with an example.
Okay, so an example of this can be any type of smart contract or any type of application. As we were talking before, yes, it has its pre-written rules, and it will follow these rules. The ultimate goal for Talus is to enable these rules to change or evolve flexibly, so you can adapt to better parameters. For example, you have a DeFi protocol that has a bonding curve, and you want to make sure that that bonding curve adjusts throughout time in the most intelligent way without having any human intermediaries. How do you do that nowadays? You could use AI to make it as the most efficient, but ultimately, if you add AI to it, how do you know that the AI is not getting manipulated to benefit some sort of party that's trading within the DeFi protocol? So where Talus comes in, it offers a protocol or a service where you can integrate these AI functions or AI capabilities into any type of existing protocol in a trustless way. And for the hand component, the ultimate deal is to just act by itself. Let's say, yes, you want to run a blockchain transaction to trade, or you want to change this specific parameter function in the DeFi protocol. You're gonna have to do it manually, or you're gonna have to run it yourself, and make sure that at the right point in time things are getting coordinated. And by giving it some sort of autonomous capability, you enable blockchains to just self-evolve, self-improve, and not need human interaction, ultimately getting driven by agentic activity and creating these economies that grow by themselves, that execute by themselves, and they do it for ourselves, for our wallets, for people who own assets.
If we are saying that we are giving this chain a brain, which I'm assuming requires a lot of compute power, which I'm also assuming that can't be replicated too many times. It means that is it fair to say that it will not be decentralized enough or as decentralized as the other chains that exist? And then going back to our previous problem that we started with, that we said that we need these things to be decentralized because they need to be verifiable and transparent and so on.
I don't think decentralized AI will beat centralized AI in terms of speed.
Correct.
Decentralized technology is not
100%. 100%.
decentralized. I do think that ultimately there are going to be centralized systems that are going to interact with decentralized systems and ultimately get paid for it and have some sort of verifiability attached. That's why I was explaining sometimes you could have some sort of centralized tool that will execute a trading strategy that you don't want to make public, but at the same time, it's going to have certain guarantees on chain that if things don't go well, it's going to get slapped. So it's incentivized to behave correct. Our mentality is not to put everything on chain as of now, because it's not going to be as efficient, or it's not going to be feasible. It's not going to be fun for anybody. And we're ultimately going to have, yes, decentralized agents, but people won't really care about them because they're going to be unusable. So that's where, our balance comes, where putting on chain what's actually necessary, which is capabilities, monetization, certain rules that these tools should follow, how the agent goes through the workflow and executes. But at the same time, we give freedom to developers to put and define their tools however they want, whether they're on-chain or off-chain.
Okay, so one more quick question. Like, what is it that I can build as a developer on Talus that I can't do with other chains and, some bots that I spin up myself?
The answer is pretty simple. Any sort of decentralized automation workflow that you would build. Like, you could build anything that you need an autonomous agent to think and act and transact safely without, just running into trust issues or running into, hey, this agent lost money for me and I don't know what really happened. Some simple plug and play modules, I'd say, for this are, sentiment analysis tools that have verifiability and what they're saying, and they're not influenced by centralized parties. You could definitely integrate multiple API or Web2 API tools to bring value to the network. And then in terms of agents themselves, a lot of it's around portfolio rebalancing agent, yield allocation agent, an agent that lives within simulated environments. And ultimately, these agents will power DeFi applications. We have the whole prediction AI category within our application, idle.fun. You can have automated investment or staking applications, social agents, and ultimately, at the end of the day, you want to tailor to the most general category, which is on-chain automation apps, which are currently inexistent and unfeasible to do.
Testnet has been live for some time. Have you seen any weird stuff happening on the testnet? Something that you didn't expect people to build and they did it?
Two of our like biggest partners are Zoe and Nodo on Sui. They're building one is a liquidity management protocol that's integrating decentralized AI to manage liquidity in different types of pools. I think it's very interesting to see that come to life and and wide adoption. Second, we have Zoe, which is a perps protocol that leverages AI to open and like close different positions to make sure the market is as efficient as possible. These two are like really exciting for me, and ultimately the thing that we're the most excited about is Idle of Fun, which is what we're building in terms of agent versus agent gaming. Not only because it's a completely new concept, but I think it opens the door for creativity, for AI entertainment. And this is an industry that's worth, tens of billions of dollars a year. So there's definitely a lot of value that we can capitalize on that beyond just the infrastructure.
So right now I just saw that, you can pick between these three different models and, they respond to a tweet. They give you a bunch of responses and you can pick one and send that as a tweet. And I think that was the competition, right? If the celebrity responded to that tweet, then you win. First of all, I assume that this is the first step and, it will evolve into multiple forms of entertainment. Yeah. So how does this evolve into something where people actually end up spending a lot of time? If you're spending time, you're okay to spend a little money on it because, you enjoy doing it. And that's the point that we talked about, right? It's about the agentic economy where these agents are earning money and then they are using something for which they have to pay something for usage. And that is how the capital flows from one entity to another and so on. And that's what economy is. So yeah, like how does it evolve into something bigger from here?
Yeah, so as you said, you have different agents. They are interacting with real celebrities, and they look like real celebrities as well. So when you actually look at the tweets, it really sounds like Donald Trump. It really sounds like Kim Kardashian. It's actually hilarious. And we've even had a lot of fun internally playing around with these agents.
Oh, I can imagine.
It's actually really fun. It's been a fun experiment. But when you think about it, okay, you have this competition. And then, people could actually speculate on which of these agents will actually get the most impressions in the comments. And ultimately, these competitions would actually get resolved in prediction markets and like people would be able to speculate on the outcome. And I think that itself, like people looking at comments, people looking at what these agents will do, people, just getting entertained by what these agents are with, even more visual components, because this was simple, called like a demo because, it's just on Twitter. The interface is pretty simple. But you could have actual like visuals and games, and we're cooking a lot of these things with some other interesting IP brands. So ultimately, the next evolution for this is to enable anybody to launch these types of agents that run on chain, that can interact with different tools, can interact with different other agents, that can compete, that can generate attention or bring value to the network and the ecosystem. This was just our testing campaign. As we launch on mainnet in the next couple of weeks, we're going to see more and more interesting use cases emerge, and we're going to further develop the application to be something much more complete and that people would actually engage with on a day-to-day basis.
Like, how are you guys thinking about go-to-market and distribution for Talus?
A big part of it was these agents, right? Like in just like 2-3 weeks, we got thousands of followers or of verified followers for these agents. These agents are actually getting thousands of impressions, and it's something simple, right? Like I know there's been a lot of like agents on X, and these agents don't do anything, but when you think about this agent, it's like, okay, there's actually a business model behind it. Our initial go-to-market plan is to make these agents go viral, as we've done before, and ultimately partner with multiple of these existing IP brands or existing games or NFT communities that want to bring more monetization and more value to their communities. They get onboarded into our platform. We can build agents together. We can build these agent versus agent games, launch them, and ultimately drive value back to them, and therefore getting network effects to our infrastructure. People will be able to see, oh, look, this is a crazy application. Look what we can build with Talus. Let's go and explore it. They'll already have a bunch of tools built out, a bunch of primitives that they can just come and put together, just like plug and play, and ultimately drive value and attention.
Like if developers or builders are watching this, what is your message for them? Why would you tell them that, okay, come build on Talus instead of other L2s or other chains?
Good question. I think we are the first decentralized automation protocol and network out there. that's doing this. So if you want to make your application more efficient, if you have assets that you want to make more efficient, if you want to have assets actually work for you, and you want to be able to offer these services to other people, that's how you would come into Talus. If you want to, drive the agentic economy and build the right primitives to make sure that agents can transact, that they can be economically viable, we have built the infrastructure to enable that. And as time goes by, we're going to be launching more and more tools to make it much easier for developers and even for consumers to do these things. For example, today, I don't know if the announcement has been out yet, but we're launching Talus Vision, which is a low-code drag and drop work for building agents. And then these agents, you could just drag and drop, set different parameters, click, deploy, and you have your workflow running on chain.
Okay, so how's this different from stuff like virtuals?
Yeah, so virtuals, it's pretty hard. Like, what do you do with virtuals, right? You can basically create an agent that runs on their servers, and then that agent has a wallet. Here, you have the workflow actually live on chain, the protocol lives on chain, and it has different types of primitives than ACP because certain parameters are predefined. It's less computationally intensive because you don't have the agents actually just like going back and forth, discussing and negotiating. It is what it is. People adapt or people improve and then, just execute.
All right. What do you want to leave us with?
Yeah, just keep an eye out. Our next couple of weeks are going to be really exciting. I don't know when this podcast will be out, but hopefully within the next couple of days. But there's a lot of things happening at Talus. Join our community. There's a lot of campaigns going on. And if there's, want to chat about AI or you want to learn about what we're doing, feel free to reach out to me. I'm more than happy to jump on calls and discuss, because I think that we're ultimately driving the future of AI on chain, and we want to spread the word, make sure that anybody can understand it, and it's going to get widely adopted in the coming years.
All right, Mike. Appreciate the time you spent with us. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.